I don't know how long I have. My battery's at 14% and I don't dare start that van. If I do, they'll hear me. I know that sounds paranoid, but you didn't see them. Or maybe you have. If you have, tell me. I need to know how to get out of here. Okay? I travel alone. I document it. My channel isn't big yet, maybe 12,000 subscribers, but I post regularly. Off-grid campsites, van conversations, solo travel trips, and that kind of thing. I stay out of cities, and I stay off of well-worn paths. The further I am from people, the safer I feel. Or I guess I should be saying the safer I used to feel. Tonight I'm parked off the forest road in Idaho, miles from the nearest town. It's the kind of place where if you screamed, no one would hear you. That's one of my go-to videos, by the way. A big scream, loud as I can, and then just silence afterward. Basically, the place was perfect. Until the knock came. A single, soft knock. Not on the door. On the window. I froze. It was just after 1 a.m. The woods were silent. No wind and no animal noises. My van is unmarked. I never advertise I'm a woman traveling alone, and I always wait and post my videos a week after, just to make sure that no one catches on to where I'm parked. So, how did someone find me, let alone creep up without setting off any of my motion lights? Another knock. Light. Insistent. There was no way this could be anything good, right? My heart was racing, my stomach already twisted into knots, muscles pulled tight. I reached for my phone. My stupid fingers fumbled and it hit the floor mat. The thump seemed to thunder loud, and when I sat back up, I nearly screamed. A child's face was pressed against the window. Pale skin, dark hair, wide, staring eyes. But something was wrong. The glass reflected weird, but there was no shine in the kid's pupils. Just black. Completely black. I choked on my breath. Every instinct in me just screamed wrong, wrong, wrong. Why was this child out here? I was so far away from any of the main roads. It wasn't the kind of place children would be. The kid didn't move, didn't blink. Then, another knock. My head snapped towards the sound, and my stomach dropped. There was a second one. A little girl this time, standing by my back door. Same dark hair. Same vacant, black stare. I don't scare easy. I've slept in parking lots where guys tried to break into my van. I've camped in places where the only sounds were coyotes circling. I'm not an adrenaline junkie, but I'm also not just starting out. But this was something else. I kept my hand low, fumbling for my knife while trying to keep my breathing steady. That sounds bad. These were just kids, right? But you don't understand. There was something wrong with them. The boy at the window finally spoke. "Let us in." 3 words. No emotion. No inflection. Just a flat, empty demand. I shook my head. It made all my hair stand up on end. He spoke again, more persistent this time. "Let us in." The girl knocked again harder. I heard it rattle the doors. It was a childish response, but I grabbed my blanket and pulled it over my shoulders, cowering beneath the heavy cotton like it was a shield. I clutched my knife so tightly, it made my knuckles ache. I don't know how long I sat there, too afraid to breathe. I knew that if I opened the door, I wouldn't be able to close it again. Suddenly, they stepped back. The dark of the night engulfed the windows again. I barely had time to process that relief before a new sound nearly made me scream. A tap on the driver's side. I whipped around. There was a third child, A new one. This kid was a little taller. He was maybe 12 at the oldest, standing inches from my driver's side door. Unlike the other two, he was grinning. The handle jerked, but I kept my door closed, so it didn't open. The grin widened.
"Let us in."
The same 3 words. It wasn't a question, it was a demand. I don't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly they were in my hand. I flipped the ignition, and the dashboard lit up. My heart slammed. If I had to, I'd run them over. But the engine didn't start. I turned the key again. Nothing. Nothing. The battery was fine. The gas was full, and it had everything to start just fine this afternoon. But right now, the van wasn't starting. And the kids, they were still standing there, staring, smiling. I reached for my phone, fingers shaking. No service. Then the tapping started again. Every window, every door, a slow, measured rhythm. I must have blacked out at some point, because the next thing I knew, the van was filled with light. Sunlight. I woke up still clutching my knife. My doors were locked. My keys were still in the ignition. My phone was in my lap, battery at 23%. I risked a glance outside, but there were no signs of kids. I opened my driver's side door, hard hammering. The air smelled like the damp earth. Pine. A beautiful, misty morning. My tires were untouched. There were no footprints in the loamy soil. It was like they'd never been there at all. But they were. I know they were. And I know they're still out there too, because my van still won't start. And I'm worried that tonight, the knock will come again. My wife and I had been dreaming of a quaint, secluded home for years. When we found the old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, it felt like fate. The price was unbelievably low, and the house, despite its age, was in good condition. We had moved in during the late autumn, the trees bare and the sky perpetual gray. From the very first night, the house felt off. There was an unsettling stillness, as if the very air held its breath, but we chalked it up to be the nerves and exhaustion from the move. It was on our second night that we heard it. A faint, scratching noise coming from the attic. Our bedroom was on the second floor, and the attic was directly above us. At first, I dismissed it as just maybe a squirrel or something small, but the second was persistent, and it seemed to be deliberate, almost rhythmic. "Did you hear that?" My wife, Sarah, asked, her voice a whisper in the dark. "Probably just a raccoon, babe," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'll check it out tomorrow." The next day, armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, I pulled down the creaky attic ladder and climbed up. The attic was dusty and filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. There were boxes labeled with dates that went back decades, maybe even a century. I walked carefully. The floorboards groaned under my weight. I saw nothing unusual, no sign of any animals. But as I went to leave, the flashlight beam caught something odd. In the far corner of the attic, there was a small door, almost like a hatch. It was so low that you couldn't even crawl. Curious, I approached it. The door was old and wooden, with a rusty handle. I hesitated, feeling an inexplicable dread. Taking a deep breath, I tugged on the handle. The door opened with a creak that echoed in the silence. Behind it was a small, dark crawl space. I shone the flashlight inside, and saw what looked like to be a bundle of old clothes. Just as I was about to leave, something caught my eye. Among the clothes, there was a small, intricately carved box. I reached in and pulled it out. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, and the carvings were beautiful but eerie, depicting strange, contorted faces. I brought the box downstairs, and Sarah and I examined it together. Inside, we found a collection of old photographs, a child's diary, and a tarnished locket. The photographs were black and white, showing a stern-looking family in front of what appeared to be our house. The diary belonged to a girl named Eliza, and as we read through it, a chilling story began to unfold. Eliza wrote about her family, but most notably, she wrote about her brother, Thomas. Thomas, according to the diary, had always been a very peculiar kid. As he grew older, his behavior became more erratic and disturbing. He claimed to hear voices and see things that no one else could see. The family tried to keep it a secret, fearing the stigma of mental illness, especially in those times. The entries grew darker and more frantic. Eliza wrote more strange rituals Thomas would perform in the attic, about how he would sit in the corner, talking to someone only he could see. He mentioned the small door and the crawl space, and how Thomas would disappear there for hours. The final entry was most unsettling. Eliza wrote about the night when the voices told Thomas to free them. She described waking up to the sound of what sounded like scratching and found Thomas in the attic, standing in front of the small door. He turned to her, his eyes wide in terror and ecstasy, and said, "They're coming for us." After that entry, the diary abruptly ended. As we finished reading, the temperature of the room seemed to drop. We both felt it, a cold, oppressive presence. That night, the scratching in the attic returned, louder and more insistent. It was as if something was trying to break free. Sarah and I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, set our nerves on edge. Around midnight, we heard it again. The unmistakable sound of footsteps in the attic. This time, they were heavy. Deliberate, moving with a purpose. "I can't take this anymore," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to get out of here." But we didn't have anywhere to go. At least not immediately. So we decided to confront whatever it was. We grabbed flashlights and cautiously made our way to the attic. The air was freezing, and our breaths formed visible clouds. As we climbed the ladder, the footsteps stopped. The silence was even more terrifying. We reached the attic and shone our flashlights around, the beams cutting through the darkness. Everything was as I left it, except the small door. It was open. I approached it, my heart pounding. Inside, the crawl space was empty now. The bundle of clothes in the box were gone. But there was something else. A faint, almost imperceptible whispering, like a distant conversation just beyond the range of hearing. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut behind us. We were plunged into darkness, and the only light coming from our flashlights. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, until a cacophony of voices. I felt a hand grip my arm. It was Sarah. "Let's get out of here, please," she said, her voice barely audible over the noise. We scrambled down the ladder and out of the attic, slamming the hatch shut behind us. We didn't stop until we were outside, standing in the cold air of the night. The house loomed above us, its windows dark and foreboding. The next morning, we packed up our things and left. We stayed with a friend while we looked for a new place. We never went back to that house, and we never spoke about what happened again. A few months later, I received a call from the real estate agent handling the sale of our house. He told me that there was new owners that had found something in the attic. A small, intricately carved box. It was empty. The night as I tried to sleep, I heard it again. The faint sound of scratching coming from the walls. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know it's been a little bit since I've posted. I was going through some stuff. Needed to be away for a little bit, but I'm back now. But if you like this and you would like to see more, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We've got a lot of content, a lot more coming, and a lot more of these types of stories because it seems like everybody wants kind of like the darker type of stories. So, let's give them what they want. But make sure to check out the links in the description as well, like Twitter, Instagram, everything like that, including my Gmail if you want to submit a story. But, with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.